call the meeting to order. In accordance with 940 CMR 29.10, remote participation adopted by the Greater Lowell Technical School Committee on April 17, 2014, and pursuant to the Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that gather in one place. This meeting of the Greater Lowell School Committee is being conducted via remote participation by the following members: Mr. Kempton Gigi, Lee Gitchia, Mr. Curtis Lemay, Mr. George O'Hare, Mr. Matthew Sheehan, Mr. George Cassius, and myself, Paul Moran, and at present, Mr. Ed Bahu is absent. The following members and individuals are Bill Davis and Mike Knight are here, and in no in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This meeting is being recorded. Roll call.
Mr. O'Hare?
Here.
Mr. Tatsias?
Here.
Mr. Gigi?
Here.
Mr. Gitchia?
Yeah.
Mr. Sheehan?
Here.
Mr. Bahu? Mr. Lemay?
Here.
Mr. Moran?
Here. I would like to ask the interim superintendent to begin the discussion regarding the North Reading Transportation Memorandum of Agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A memorandum of agreement was reached last week with North Reading Transportation and Trombley Transportation, working with 9 other districts represented by Attorney Maccaro and McNulty. We were one of those districts. The memorandum of agreement is important to ensure continuity and capability in transportation when school resumes in the fall. They successfully negotiated to pay 78% during the school closure period for readiness services. The amount is in line with many other bus companies and district agreements across the state. Tonight, Attorney McNulty and Maccaro are here to discuss the agreement process and answer any questions that you may have. So I'd like to turn it over to Attorney Maccaro and McNulty.
Good evening, everybody. This is Attorney Mike Maccaro. It's nice to be present with you in some fashion this evening. I will explain to you what Jill has given a brief summary and just give a little bit of a timeline. I'll let Peter McNulty, partner of mine in the firm, he does a lot of corporate work and a lot of contract negotiations. I'll explain to you his involvement in this. He really did the bulk of the work and the legwork with John McCarthy, the owner of NRT, and did most of the negotiations on behalf of Greater Lowell and the 8 other school districts. But as this came about, as you are aware, obviously, COVID-19 has really put a wrench into schools in a number of fashions. On March 27th, I believe, of 2020, Commissioner Riley of DESE recommended that all school districts continue to make payments for contractual services to their transportation vendors, such as NRT. That memo sort of led a big discussion that went on a little bit statewide and concerns about whether or not school districts could lawfully pay for services that weren't being rendered. Through several telephone conferences that were held statewide, that were led by Jay Sullivan, the secretary of DESE. He had advised and put together what most districts have now since gone and done, which is to try to negotiate with the first to look at your contracts that you have with your vendors to see what obligations that you have. And then to two, once you get past that, to try to come together with other school districts that utilize the same vendor and use your power of a group as a way to negotiate. And to try to negotiate for what they called readiness services. That was DESE's way of saying this would be, if you were paying for your contracts to be ready upon a moment's notice, that would be a lawful way to make payments. Myself and attorney Peter McNulty wound up working with a lot of districts in the Merrimack Valley, and we had 9 of them. I'm happy to share which ones they are with you. They're Methuen, which is already since ratified. Wakefield, which is a little bit outside of the Merrimack Valley, they've been a part of this. They've ratified. We've had Greater Lowell, obviously here. We have Haverhill, Dracut, Andover, and North Andover, Burlington, and I'm not sure if I've named all of them, but there was 9 of them altogether. When this originally started, we looked at your contract, and your contract was not the most friendly for the school district in terms of being a potential out for any payments. That's one of the reasons why the power was good of coming together with other groups. At the time when negotiations started, Mr. McCarthy was suggesting that he would only ask for 95% of the payment under the contract. That obviously has come down to 78%, as Jill has said. And the key with that is he would not lay off any of his employees, and that 78% may even go down further depending on any relief that he may get in the future. So that is the document that I think you have all seen in a sense. At this point, it's probably good for me to turn over, unless there's any questions about the process of how we got here, to Attorney McNulty to share the specific details of the negotiations, as he is the one that really spearheaded this and I think did a nice resolution for the district.
Thanks, Mike. And Mr. Chairman, thank you for the invitation to be with you this evening, albeit via teleconference, and members of the committee, hello. I will, Mike did a great job of summarizing there, and to expand a little bit upon that regarding the posture that we took as a negotiating team, Mike and myself, and all of the representatives from the 9 different districts that were our point of contract, who were immensely helpful throughout the negotiation process. And the number one concern I think we had as part of that posture is exactly what Mike talked about regarding the legality of paying for services that may not be rendered in full, at least, to the districts. And the suggestion we got from Jay Sullivan, as Mike suggested, was the readiness of services. Concurrent with that, or perhaps as important or more importantly, is what your contract says, which I talked a little bit about, and also where you are in your contract term. If you're at the beginning of your contract term, you may be a little bit more concerned perhaps with that readiness of services. If you're at the end of your contract term, ready to put your contract back out to bid or preparing for that process, you may be less concerned, or perhaps not at all. But that was an important as far as posture is concerned. And lastly is the district's general tolerance for a vendor laying off their labor, bus drivers, dispatch, mechanics, etc. Though that was the posture we took, and it was an incredibly important step to band together with 9 districts. It gave us, I think, a little bit stronger bargaining, or a lot stronger bargaining posture as far as the outset is concerned. We had heard from districts throughout the state, beginning of this process, that, and Mike's correct, that Mr. McCarthy was suggesting a 95%. We had heard a lower number at 92.5%. That was not really acceptable to what we wanted to negotiate, but it was a process with Mr. McCarthy to try to get, I think, and I'll go through piece by piece of the memorandum of agreement if you have that with you, but the most difficult part, I think, of the negotiation was getting hard backup that Mike and I could be comfortable bringing back to the different districts to describe the costs, not just limited to labor costs, but all of the costs through which Mr. McCarthy could operate his company to be ready to flip the switch on that readiness of services, which at the time we didn't know if it was going to be May or June or some other time later in the year, which has now obviously changed with the governor extending the order through June 29. So what we were able to do, partially through the negotiation process, was enter into a non-disclosure agreement with Mr. McCarthy. I took that non-disclosure agreement and drove up to his headquarters in North Reading and spent the better part of a late morning and afternoon with his controller going through his tax returns from 2018. We had originally requested audited financial statements. He wasn't willing to provide those. I suggested that perhaps there's more recent tax returns would be illuminating so we could back up what he had given us. And there is a spreadsheet that as well by the superintendent, I believe, that shows some percentages of what his costs to operate are in his operating budget. I went up and took a look at his 1120 and 1120S for NRT and his other company that provides transportation services, Promptly, and was able to verify that the percentages he had provided, such as labor at 60% for the tax year 2018, were at 57.82%, for example. His insurance percentages of his operating budget, he has reported to the 9 districts at 4%. A different tax year, of course, but looking back at 2018, we were backing out the numbers on the tax return at 5.72%. Those are two cherry-picked examples. There are others, but I was able to gather a comfort level to report back to the school committees that the numbers he was reporting to us on his spreadsheets were accurate and backed by positive data through his tax returns from 2018. If I could turn to the memorandum of agreement in specifics, as Mike mentioned, the contract cost that we came to was 78%. That was back and forth between 95 down through 78%. This is a number we came to after some serious long negotiations. As Mike mentioned, there are ties in this memorandum of agreement to any relief that is offered through the CARES or the FFCRA, the two acts that were passed by Congress and have since been updated, specifically the CARES Act. The agreement requires Mr. McCarthy and his staff to apply for any available aid or remedies that has been provided or will be provided. The president this past weekend suggested there would be more relief packages coming. That wasn't so clear last week, but he was very clear in what he was saying this weekend in his interview. Mr. McCarthy estimates, and this is an important point, I think, that he will receive 15% in a cost reduction in his overall budget through employee retention tax credits available through the FFCRA and the CARES Act. He has passed along those cost savings to the districts. That's important for a couple of reasons. It eliminates any concern for sort of double dipping between the vendors insofar that they're being paid at least something by the districts, number one. And number two, also receiving what amounts to significant relief through these acts that are provided by Congress. So that's important. Again, that's an estimate, 15%. The agreement contemplates perhaps if John and his staff have made a mistake or an error in their calculations, if they receive more through the employee retention tax credit, perhaps 17% in a reduction of their budget costs. That additional amount needs to be passed along to the districts. If the error in mathematics or calculations made by John and his team is less than that, perhaps he receives a 10% reduction in his overall operating costs, then that amount cannot be passed along to the districts. So the districts receive the benefit of any error in math if John receives additional percentage reduction through the employee retention tax credits, but will not receive the detriment if the error is in the opposite direction. Section 11 in the memorandum of agreement enforces that agreement. Section 11 states that the districts may ask for any documentation in order to demonstrate compliance with this memorandum of agreement when requested. I already have it from John and his team that they are willing to provide any payroll records that prove that their people are being paid throughout the shutdown to ensure that no layoffs occur. This number 11 is also important to ensure that he has applied for and received, and those discounts are being passed along to the districts any available relief through federal or state legislation, or otherwise for that matter. Other than that, there is a Section 6 moving through the agreement, passes along to the districts a reduction in insurance costs. John has anticipated that he will be able to negotiate a 50% reduction in his insurance costs through his carrier, primarily tied to the vehicle insurance policies. Obviously, those buses aren't running, so he's able to negotiate lowered rates with his carriers, but he still needs to keep his insurance in place for facilities that he rents, casualty insurance and the like, whether that be his headquarters or bus lots that he may rent, as the case may be. Number 7 codifies the fact that NRT will not lay off or furlough any employees related to the contract between NRT and Greater Lowell. 8 was an important caveat to many of the districts, that in the event that it is made illegal that payments are made from a public entity such as the school district to NRT, that any of those amounts that had been remitted under the contract, under a memorandum of agreement or a different, however it may look, need to be remitted back to the district. That was important. John has also agreed to make his drivers available for the deliveries of educational supplies, other things such as meals, which was important to a few of our districts who have meal programs in place while the schools are closed. Safety training, section number 10, continues. Professional development continues. Number 11, we discussed. I called that out of order because I thought it was important. And a condition here, number 12, which allows for the district and MRT to negotiate a further MOA middle contract term by August 1st this summer in preparation for the next school year, if things are not looking like we're going to reopen on a date certain come September or August as we normally would. And those are I think the most important parts of the MOA and the most important parts of what we were thinking and how we got here. And I'm more than willing to ask any questions and invite Mike. If I left anything out, please jump in and let me.
No, Peter, I think that you've covered everything through this. Maybe you could just tell the committee, I know Peter and I, we presented this to the Methuen School Committee last Monday night, and it was approved unanimously. Peter has gone solo to some other districts. And can you just give an update on what the other districts that we know have voted have done on this?
Yeah. Methuen, as you said, Whitfield voted in the affirmative. Andover and North Andover both voted in the affirmative to ratify memorandum of agreement. I believe Burlington and Dracut, Mike, have tabled the issue. They just didn't get to it. And they perhaps will look at it at a future meeting or a future emergency or a special meeting. And Havel and Lawrence, I don't believe have met yet.
Okay, yeah, I know I've had some communication. We've been in touch with Stephen Stone, and they have not taken it in front of their school committee just yet.
Mr. Mitchell. Hello?
Yes, Mr. Moran.
Mr. Mitchell. No, I just want to say it sounds like a job well done. And you seem to have covered all the bases.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would really say Attorney McNulty did most of the legwork, all of the legwork here with John, and he's done a fabulous job working with all the districts and their business administrators and superintendents. And Jill and Mike were part of those conversations as well. I want to make sure that they get credit as well, because there was a lot of input amongst all the parties to get to this spot.
I'm sure I'm aware of that, yeah. As you as well, Mike.
Thank you, Attorney Maccaro and Attorney McNulty. I appreciate it. So I think at this time, I'm looking for approval to accept the North Reading Transportation Trombley Bus MOA.
Curtis LeMay would move to approve.
I'll second that. Wait.
Okay. Mr. O'Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Tatsias?
Yes.
Mr. Gigi?
Yes.
Mr. Gettier?
Yes.
Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. LeMay?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
So 7 yes, 1 absent.
Thank
So
you.
therefore, if there are no other questions, I would make a motion to adjourn.
Well, let me ask, Paul, let me ask a couple questions here.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, so we get this money back and the towns and cities give us the money for transportation, correct?
You are correct. They're assessed for transportation, yes.
So should we look into giving them the money back that we got, seeing they're giving it to us, minus the attorney fees that we paid for them to negotiate? I guess I'm saying we probably should just give the money back to the towns, cities and towns. It'll look good on our behalf. Seeing they're the ones that fund it.
I think that would be up to the school committee to make that decision on whether or not they would like to give the towns back their portion, based on their assessment.
So I guess I'll make the motion to give the money back to the cities and towns minus the attorney fees that we paid to negotiate this.
Matt,
I don't think we heard you, Matt, Mr. Sheehan.
Yeah, I said, I'll second what Lee said.
Okay, so just to be clear, the motion is to return the money back to the towns minus the attorney fees for the transportation.
Yes.
Okay, do the roll. Mr. O'Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Tatsias?
Yes.
Mr. Gigi?
Yes.
Mr. Getchia?
Yes.
Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. LeMay?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
7 yes, 1 absent.
Any other questions?
No, I think we're complete. Thank you for your support on this.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for all the work you've done. I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Who was that?
Mr. LeMay?
Curtis.
Okay,
Second,
Seconded?
George Tatsias. Yeah.
great. Okay, Mr. O'Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Tatsias?
Yes.
Mr. Gigi?
Yes.
Mr. Getchia?
Yes.
Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. LeMay?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
Great, thank you, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Have a good night. Be
Thank you, Jill.
safe. Thank you.
Yep.